What is practical rifle? Well, first of all, let's look at what it isn't. It isn't playing soldiers, and it isn't wild plinking with high-powered weapons. So what is it? Practical rifle is perhaps the most challenging and certainly the most disciplined, safety-conscious and fast-growing of the shooting sports. For the first time in the long history of target rifle shooting, it has become an activity sport, combining all the attraction of stalking with the traditional skills of target shooting. Let's look at a typical practice. The range officer here is outlining the course of fire for a classic practical rifle shoot, the Regina. Not to be recommended for those who find walking the dog a major athletic achievement. The reasons become obvious.
So are you all clear on the course of fire? I'll just run through the timing again. The targets will appear for 45 seconds. You will proceed your rundown to the 500-yard point, adopt the prone position and fire 2 rounds. You will remain in the prone position after the targets have disappeared until they reappear after a further interval of 15 seconds. Firing point to butts. Are you ready in the butts, please? Over.
Firing point, we are ready in the butts. Over.
Firing point to butts. Take the red flag down, please. Shooters, make safe and adopt the prone position.
The courses of fire on any given day will provide the shooter with a balanced set of problems. This means, in effect, that no particular weapon or caliber is favored. For example, the long-range stages may be to the advantage of the heavy-barreled 7.62s, 303s and other large calibers.
Adopt the prone position.
Whilst at the shorter distances, often involving multiple targets where time is a major factor, the lightweight, minimal recoil, large magazine capacity 223s may have the edge, but not necessarily. For ultimately it's the shooter's skill, rather than his equipment, that will produce the best results. And that's as it should be.
Watch out, watch out.
Stand by. Singles up.
They're up.
Participation is perhaps the key factor in practical rifle, for the success of any shoot will depend entirely on the element of teamwork. No range day is made up of shooters alone. For every rifleman, there will be range officers, scorers, timers, personnel on butt duty, and those regular reliable stalwarts who will have designed, made and carried the very targets themselves. It is a highly labor-intensive operation. Of vital importance is the question of safety. For by definition, large areas of the range, or indeed the whole range itself, may be used for the courses of fire. Safety is paramount. Any forward movement is only undertaken with safety catches applied and fingers well clear of the trigger. Any infringement results in instant disqualification and later disciplinary action. At all times during a course of fire, muzzles are kept pointing in a safe direction, the only safe direction being towards the target. If this seems somewhat formal and pedestrian, it is a small price to pay. For a moment's lack of vigilance and the possible resulting accident would bring the whole sport into disrepute. Range time is precious and expensive, and appropriate ranges are hard to come by. So time wasting is to be avoided at all costs. And although the right of every shooter is to enjoy his day, so it is also his duty to do a spell of time in the butts, for without the butt party, there would be no shooting. Speed without accuracy is meaningless, and accuracy without speed just won't produce the scores. If there is a philosophy of practical rifle, then it must surely be accuracy, speed, and power. So how is this achieved? Power factoring has been described by the distinction drawn between major and minor caliber and their scoring values. Now, what is meant by those terms major and minor? There is a dividing line above which the large calibers, such as 7.62 and 303, are considered major, and the lower calibers, such as 223, minor. The effect this has on the score is to give the advantage to the larger or more powerful calibers at the shorter ranges. Typically, a major caliber would score 10, 8 and 6, whereas the minor caliber would score 10, 6 and 4. However, at ranges above 250 yards, both calibers are scored equally, with the higher values.
2 by 6.
Clear weapons! Range officers, prove clear.
Clear.
Another practical rifle classic is this course of fire known as the Kabul Chorus. A timed practice, the shooter has 2.5 minutes to complete the course of fire. It starts with a rundown of some 75 yards, followed by a 25-yard crawl. On reaching the 200-yard firing point, a sequence of targets is engaged with the following results. You'll notice that targets react when hit, or not, as the case may be. Only when a target is hit does the next target appear. Apart from the 2 boundary markers, which incidentally if hit incur penalty points, there are 5 targets to be engaged, and also 2 no-shoot targets, again involving penalties if hit. You'll notice that the moving targets get smaller as the practice progresses. A further factor is that the shooter must also score a minimum of 5 hits on each of his static shoot targets, and at the same time trying to keep his moving targets in play between the boundary markers, as they reverse direction each time they're hit. It sounds complicated, but if you observe the principle of if it moves, shoot it, then you can't go far wrong. Practical rifle is an advanced form of competitive shooting. Whilst encouraging new membership, practical rifle is not for the novice. As can readily be seen from the courses of fire, familiarity with weapon handling is essential, and safety of paramount importance, not qualities to be found without considerable experience. As it is essentially a practical sport, the practical-minded will undoubtedly be asking, okay, it's a great sport, but what does it cost? Practical rifle isn't cheap, although it compares favorably with other sports. It's certainly cheaper than clay pigeon shooting or golf, but equally it's not for those who are short of the odd bob or two. So what does it cost? Well, membership of a club may cost around £15 a year. Range fees will typically be no more than £5 a day. And if you already own a suitable magazine rifle, such as one of the classic Lee Enfields, then there's no reason at all not to use it.
Once you set up to load your ammunition, you...
Well, this is a jungle carbine. In fact, it's in 7.62. Originally they were in 303, but it makes a very useful practical rifle if you're going to shoot bolt action. This one, as you can see, has a 32 scope fitted, which means that you can shoot 1,000 yards, and although I'm not the world's greatest shot, I can certainly put them all on the man-sized target at 1,000 yards. Otherwise, it's just a virtually as-issued jungle carbine, except that the sling is the Springfield-type sling, which I've had mounted at the base, as you can see, with a sling swivel, because the usual one went to here, which makes it a bit difficult for practical. When the 7.62 barrel was fitted, the flash suppressor was put back on again because the barrel was cut so that it still looked like a jungle carbine, but it is a very useful tool and eminently suitable for practical rifle, and it certainly keeps the ammunition rate down. The other thing about it is that I had a couple of spare magazines made up. That's the normal 10-round magazine, but this is a 30-round magazine, which on some of the courses of fire gives you that extra little bit of firepower that you need. The other thing, if you've got a bolt-action rifle, is to have some sort of pouch. These are quite good. These, I think, are Swiss, actually, but they very neatly take a 10-round Enfield magazine.
.223 caliber Colt AR-15, the civilian semi-automatic derivative of the M16. This one's particularly well dressed with the Colt 3-power scope. Again, it has a little bullet drop compensator and very simple rifle. Ejects the cases a long way, and of course 223 is one caliber where you can save quite a lot of money by reloading, which means you've got to collect the cases. So this one, in fact, has a case catcher. Looks like quite a large lump, but it does mean that you don't have to go scrubbling around in the grass, mud and clag for your cases once fired, which on an open range could mean a lot of searching. Magazines, the standard magazine is 20 rounds, and fine, but 30 round is better, and indeed there are 40 round magazines which are often found made by Sterling. Indeed, with the magazine, that one's new and a bit tight. Even with the case catcher on, you can eject the magazine simply like that, which is quite useful. Bipods for these are available and clip on the barrel, rather like a big clothes peg. Now that may steady you up, but unfortunately it throws the point of impact way out because again it's disturbing the barrel resonances. So there's no substitute for learning to shoot well without a bipod.
Yeah.
These rifles are of the M14 pattern and are very popular with practical rifle shooters. This is an M14 which originally fired with an automatic capability where it had a little selector lever here which has been removed to make it simply semi-automatic. Excellent rifle, gas operated, and strangely enough not requiring any adjustment on the gas setting. The M1A is a derivative of that, made by Springfield Armory as semi-automatic only, in 3 grades. Basically, we get to the standard grade and then match grades which have a glass-bedded action, which floats the barrel through the stock. This improves the accuracy. But of course, if you then attach a bipod to the barrel, you're undoing all that good work. So here we have one with a bipod attached quite correctly to the stock. This is a 6x42 Schmidt & Bender scope made in West Germany and has external bullet drop compensating adjustment knobs for your elevation and also for your windage. The stocks on the M14s were either plastic or birch. A few walnut stocks were made. On the M1As they're generally walnut. This is a laminated maple and walnut stock, which is extremely resilient in any weather conditions, and in some of the conditions that practical rifle shooters become involved, this will take it all.
Okay, an interesting variant on the M1A M14 series of rifle is this Mini 14 produced in America by Ruger. It's essentially the same format of design, still gas operated but with a rather simplified mechanism. It has the familiar cocking handle mechanism here operating the bolt, and a bolt that rotates slightly to lock into place. This version is fitted with integral scope mounts to take some very good scope mounts, essential for rigid scope mounting for accuracy, and as such it all adds up to a very light, very well balanced package in the 223 calibre. It's a very nice gun, I would say, for possibly the more slightly built shooter, possibly some of the lighter ladies that are shooting practical rifle, but even for the gentleman, still a rifle that handles very, very nicely. This rifle would retail currently at about £390 with accessories such as the Harris bipod on the Harris bipod adapter coming as an optional extra.
Muzzle. It's a very good one,
Right, well this is the finished Valmet. It's made in 223 and 762 Russian, although this one's in 223. It's just another variant of the AK-47, and the AK-47, as you know, doesn't have a hold open device, so I've had one cut here so that it does actually hold open. This particular model has a 15 round magazine or a 30 round magazine. Otherwise is a fairly conventional sort of weapon. Now the interesting thing is that I've had an aim point fitted to this one, and it seemed to me that the simple thing to do was to have a separate cover fitted for that. So this is the normal cover with the conventional sight, which is actually quite an interesting sight anyway, because as you can see there's an aperture backside there, but if you flick the sight over like that and the foresight like that, you then have an open sight for night use. However, to fit the aim point, all I've done is simply take the cover with the open sights off, replace it with the cover with the aim point, cock it just to make sure that the locating rod is firmly in position, and there's the aim point, which is quite an interesting sight. There are two dry cell batteries which operate it, and all that you have in the in your viewfinder is simply a red dot, which you place on the target and pull the trigger, and that's the aim point. About 200 quid, which is not excessive. The Valmet itself, I suppose, must be what, about 500 these days, but a very useful little weapon, and one that would certainly be ideal for practical rifle.
We've already seen the Valmet M76 as one example of the Kalashnikov AK type of rifle. This is another variety. This is the Galil, produced by Israeli military industries for their own Israeli forces. Although in this version it obviously looks very much like a paratrooper's rifle, and possibly not the most suitable format for practical rifle. It does in fact have a very good folding stock, which quickly and rigidly snaps into position, thus leaving it as a standard fixed stock rifle, very suitable for our type of sport. This particular model also has the very effective Galil bipod, which very quickly snaps into position, and is also fitted with an adapter to allow it to use the common and cheap M16 format of magazine. The cocking lever on the top here reveals one of the disadvantages of this weapon in that there is no holdover open mechanism, such that possibly a piece of wood or other material is necessary to hold the bolt open to prove that the rifle is actually empty between practices. Okay.
This is an example of Swiss engineering at its best. It's reputed to be the best assault rifle ever made, and I believe it. It's certainly very rare. It's considered too expensive to make. It's 7.62 SIG AMT. A few of these are seen in practical rifle, 20-round magazine. This one has iron sights, as indeed the original scope and mount are even rarer. One or two interesting features in that it was the only rifle ever made with adjustable headspace. With the magazine applied the right way around, unfortunately there's no hold open on the bolt, but we have a bipod which folds nicely out of the way and is detached from the barrel, and also we have, for winter conditions, a winter trigger so that one can shoot with a gloved hand. Rather nice, very expensive, and I have one.
Not all courses of fire in practical rifle require great firepower and very rapid shots. For example, the 1,000-yard snaps course requires 2 rounds to be fired in perhaps 10 seconds or longer. Courses like the 1,000-yard snaps allow the use of a rifle such as this, the Mannlicher SSG Match. It has a very heavy barrel and as such would be fairly unsuitable for courses where you have to run very fast or very far, but for a limited number of shots to be fired with great accuracy on a typical sniper course, it is of course a very great advantage. It has a very smooth operating mechanism with a large bolt handle, allowing one to eject the fired round, chamber the new round without much disturbance or taking the rifle from the shoulder. It comes with either the 5-round magazine on the rotary pattern, for which Mannlicher is famous, or possibly more useful for the practical rifle, the 10-shot straight feed magazine such as this. This model is actually fitted with a telescopic sight with a bullet drop compensator on it, which allows it to be used over a variety of distances very easily.
Well, this is another classic bolt-action rifle, in fact the number 4T, the British sniping rifle of the Second World War. It's basically the number 4, which was specially selected but with the Monte Carlo stock added, as you can see here, and of course the number 32 scope, which is very effective indeed. It's heavy if you're going to start running about with it, but nevertheless a very useful rifle if you're going to enjoy practical rifle. The scope itself is quite interesting, the 32 scope, and the correct way incidentally to adjust it is to, when you fit it, tighten this bolt but finally finish by tightening the back one. That's the one that should take the final adjustment. The nice thing about it is that the calibrations on the drum are in hundreds of yards and very accurate indeed. The other thing is that it has the classic American Springfield sling, and if you assemble it correctly for sniping,
the way to do it is you get the loop over your bicep like that, and then pull up the keeper there, and it effectively gives you a single point sling, which makes a very, very rigid mount indeed. Quite a difficult sling to assemble if you don't know how to do it, and it's only because I've got a 1941 manual that I found which showed you how you do it that I was able to actually achieve that. But the number 4T, very successful rifle, in 303 of course.
So that's the basic equipment. But what about the ammunition? Well, 7.62 is around £16 a hundred, and 2.23 about 17 or 18 pounds a hundred. You could, of course, reload, and that will reduce your costs considerably. So if we've aroused your interest, where do you go from here? Well, the NRA recognised practical rifle, and there are local clubs throughout the country with their regional organisers. However, the London Practical Shooting Club, which sponsored this programme, will be pleased to receive your inquiries and advise you further, and our address and phone number will be found at the end of the programme. Let's leave you, however, with what is perhaps the ultimate in practical rifle.